Hey everybody, good news! The Interlibrary Loan Service here is up and running again, so we're back in business as far as that stuff is concerned, which means that I can finally bring you a review of the Rebirth of Mothra Trilogy. These three films were released in the break between Godzilla's Heisei series, which ended in 1995 with Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, and the Millennium series, which kicked off in 1999 with Godzilla 2000. Since the three films go together as a trilogy, I've decided to review them all at once. Hopefully this doesn't get too confusing, for you or for me. Released in 1996, Rebirth of Mothra, Japanese title Masura, was directed by Okihiro Yoneda and is considered the final film produced by Tomoyuki Tanaka, one of Godzilla's creators. A logging company unearths a strange rock in which is embedded an ancient seal. The seal gives tremendous power to whoever possesses it, and the rock contains Desghidorah, a destructive alien monster that threatens to suck the energy from the planet. These two discoveries get the attention of Mothra's mini-priestesses, who are like joint guardians of Earth's safety. But Mothra is old and weak. It's doubtful she can defeat her old foe on her own. So the priestesses team up with two little kids to help Mothra fight Desghidorah and save the world. I had expectations that this movie would be aesthetically pleasing, and it delivered. It's about as eye-catching as a Mothra film should be. It's bright, it's colorful, there's rainbow shimmer, and there's a return of the famous Heisei gold glitter dust. Yes! So much gold glitter dust! I love it! What I didn't know was that this movie was made for a younger audience than your typical Godzilla film, especially the last ones, which came just before this, which got pretty dark. Rebirth of Mothra goes in a different direction. The mood is lighter overall, and it focuses on two young children, siblings who hate each other and fight all the time, who have to learn to work together and help each other. Megumi Kobayashi and Sayaka Yamaguchi play Mothra's mini-priestesses named Maul and Laura, who travel around on the back of a mini-Mothra named Fairy. In a departure from past Mothra films, they're not twins, and they don't wear matching clothes. I admit I miss the symmetry of their outfits and their movements, but it is interesting that they've got distinct personalities. The film includes 3 musical interludes, which are kind of like 90s music videos that are rolled out in the break between action sequences. First up, of course, is Mothra's song, originally written by Yuji Koseki for the 1961 film. You all know I love this song, but I do feel like there's something lacking in this particular rendition. The composition seems a little disjointed, like the song and the score by Toshiyuki Watanabe were done separately. The second song is performed while the new Mothra larva is hatching, and the third occurs during the transformation sequence. Throwing a spanner in the works is, spoiler, but not really, their evil sister Belvira, played by Aki Hano, who wants the ancient seal and its power for herself. She's a mischief maker, riding around on the back of a tiny dragon, laughing at all the trouble she causes. She's like the offspring of Loki and the Wicked Witch of the West. But even though it's definitely made for kids, it still gets pretty violent during the fight scenes. Desghidorah is a jerk, he's ugly, he goes after kids, and he fights dirty. Unsurprisingly, given the name, Desghidorah, transliteration Death Ghidorah, bears a strong resemblance to King Ghidorah, so it's not a huge surprise when Desghidorah sprouts wings in the third act and takes to the air. I'll point out that no cities are destroyed in this film, and at one point Maul and Laura assure the kids that the forest won't be damaged permanently. This seems like an attempt to tone down the intensity of the threat. It's got some tense moments though, like the scene where the family is rushing to escape the fire. They get so close that the boy's shoes are smoking and his dad's are burning. And really, the whole idea of these two little kids running around alone on a mountain where there's fire and smoke and a giant 3-headed alien dragon is pretty terrifying. This is another instance where Mothra gives her all in a fight against a bigger and more powerful monster, this time to save her own baby. The death scene is a touching one, her body sinking down into the sea as her prematurely hatched offspring looks on. This moment between Mothra and her larva is way sadder than it has any right to be. So yeah, Mothra dies 2/3 into the first installment of the trilogy. I didn't know that, although I guess in hindsight I should have expected it since it is called Rebirth of Mothra. The larva goes off to make a cocoon and transform, first emerging as thousands of tiny moths which then assemble into the form of the new Mothra. This is the main kaiju of the trilogy, which has been given the name Mothra Leo by English-speaking audiences, I guess taken from the song that plays over the transformation sequence. Also referred to as New Mothra or Excelled Mothra, this kaiju features a slightly different design and color scheme, and is male. He's like an even more magical Mothra. He can divide himself, make himself invisible, restore the devastated forest. Makes you wonder, what else can he do? So, this movie was a little more juvenile than I anticipated, which is a drawback to me. At this point in my life, I'm generally not seeking such youthful entertainment. There's quite a lot of cheesiness, and at least in the dubbed version, which is what we watched, the kids can get pretty annoying, but I do like their development. At times the film is overdramatic, the moralizing is heavy-handed, and fight scenes tend to go on for too long. A common issue in the Godzilla franchise. There are also a ton of digital effects. Not totally surprising in a Mothra movie, since you can't just ask a stunt guy to suit up and fly. But, oof, some of the CGI here is really dated. Sometimes the green screen effects are decent, but they're obviously green screen effects, and they're heavily used. But I like that there aren't too many characters and elements to keep track of, and in the dubbed version at least, the story's pretty straightforward. And it's got all the vibrancy and music and theatricality we've come to expect from a Mothra movie. On to Rebirth of Mothra 2 from 1997. The Japanese title is Mothra Su Kaitei no Daikessen, or Mothra 2, The Battle Under the Deep Sea, which gives you a hint about the plot. Mothra is called upon to save the world from Dagara, or in the English dub, Dagarla, a sea monster that feeds on pollution and threatens to destroy the planet. It's actually more complicated than that. It's crazy. You don't watch one of these movies for a while and you forget just how much they like to cram in. Dagara produces these mutant starfish that open up a la Ridley Scott's Alien. They're the kind of weird creature these two treasure hunters are on the lookout for, but what they really want is this little being with magical healing powers that looks like a cross between a Furby, a Tribble, and Gizmo from Gremlins, called Gogo, or Gorgo in the dub, which is also being sought by Belvira, who possesses the treasure hunters to help her find it. But Gorgo is being protected by a little girl and her two schoolmates, who were bullying her but are now her allies as they bring the creature to an ancient pyramid that rises from the sea, and also helping them is Mal and Laura on the back of Fairy, who call on Mothra to fight off Dagara. Did you get all that? All three actresses from the first one return as Mal and Laura, who by the way are referred to as the Elias sisters, and their evil sister Belvira. I really appreciate that consistency, and the fact that though their costumes have changed, with Mal and Laura's dresses reflecting new Mothra's colors, and Belvira's outfit even more bombastic than before, their characters have stayed the same. It's another aesthetically pleasing adventure movie for kids, with a pretty opening title sequence and lots of stimulating visuals, and some song and dance, though less than before. It's got another heavy environmental message urging children to be nice to the planet and not repeat the mistakes of previous generations, and if the secondary lesson of the first movie was to love your siblings, the secondary lesson of this one is to work with your enemies. While the kids are forced to work together and get over their squabbles and become friends, Mal and Laura must figure out how to deal with Belvira. Mal, the bolder one, sees that they have no choice but to defeat her, but Laura, the more emotional one, is hesitant, since Belvira is still their sister, even if she is trying to wipe out the human race. But she's still not the main threat, not to Mothra at least. That lot falls to Dagara, whose ominous appearance makes him a natural fit with other kaiju baddies of the period. Note that Koichi Kawakita, special effects director on this and the last movie, also worked in the same capacity on the Heisei Godzilla films, so if there are some similarities, that may explain why. Dagara is not the most graceful monster as he comes ashore and wrecks the city. He is a sea-dwelling monster after all, and, well, it's always awkward when a sea-dwelling monster starts walking on land and trying to blow up cities, and I'm not sure what's going on with his anatomy, as he seems to have a large arsenal of weapons built in, almost like a mecha, and what do you know? He can fly too. But it's okay, because Mothra also has an apparently unlimited supply of powers and abilities, which come in handy. It's a bit much. Mothra starts to hover on the brink of invincibility, which is something you don't want, because if he's invincible, then he's never in serious danger, and if he's never in serious danger, it's not very interesting. But he does eventually reach his limit, and he has to be saved, spoiler, by Gogo, or Gorgo, I haven't decided which one to say, who passes on some of his water spirit qualities so that after Mothra parts the sea like Moses for his friend's getaway, he transforms into Aqua Mothra. What? The most entertaining fight of the movie then commences underwater, with Dagara and Aqua Mothra shooting fancy lasers at each other until Aqua Mothra divides himself into thousands of mini Aqua Mothras and goes inside Dagara, which is nuts, and it was at this point I said to my mom, this is a very strange movie. That wasn't the first time that I thought that, but mini Aqua Mothras flying through Dagara's innards just nudged me over the edge. What I liked most about this one was the adventurous quest and the setting of the ancient Mayan-like ruins that rise out of the water. The interior of the pyramid is pretty cool, with many floors and maze-like corridors, optical illusions, statuary, heavy sliding doors. The climactic moment in the final room seems like a test of everyone's true character, and I like the invisible bridge scene where the kid has to step out, trusting the bridge to be there when he can't see it. There are still a lot of digital effects, but this time the use of both green screens and actual location shooting felt more blended, so these scenes weren't distractingly fake. Still, I didn't love the movie, for a lot of the same reasons why I didn't love the first one. The boys were pretty annoying, a lot of the humor was not funny, and I don't think that's totally the fault of the dub, and it went on a little long. But I am well aware that as an adult in 2020, I am not the target audience for this movie. 2 days later, completing the trilogy is Rebirth of Mothra 3 from 1998, directed by Okihiro Yoneda, who did the first one. The Japanese title is Mosurasuri Kingu Ghidorah Raishu, or Invasion of King Ghidorah, and originally I thought, hey movie, you're giving away the surprise, but really the surprise is how different this movie is from the two that came before. According to the plot, millions of years ago dinosaurs roamed the earth until King Ghidorah came from outer space and wiped them out. Now he's returned during a meteor shower, and this time he's come to wipe out the human race by whisking the children away and imprisoning them under a giant dome. Mothra needs to come save them, but when King Ghidorah splits up the Elias sisters by turning Laura evil and capturing her, Mothra is weakened. If there's to be any chance of defeating King Ghidorah and getting the children back, desperate measures must be taken. After watching the first two movies, I thought I had a pretty good idea what this one would be like, but I was wrong. In tone and in subject matter, this one is quite a departure. It's still bright and colorful and fun, but it has more dark, serious moments. It even gets downright depressing at one point. I'm not complaining, I like the contrast and the depth, but whoa, not what I was expecting. You're clued in at the beginning that this one's a bit dissimilar, as it opens with a moodily lit scene where the three sisters, now dressed in pseudo-Elizabethan costumes, have an ominous conversation. And by the time you get to see the kids being spirited away, which is a spooky concept, it's quite clear that we're in for a different kind of ride. What really got me was how serious it is. Attempts at humor are minimal, almost non-existent. It's shockingly not goofy. Each film in the trilogy features a different family, specifically focusing on the children who have troubles and responsibilities and lessons to be learned. This main character, eldest son Shota, seems considerably older than the previous protagonists, and more grave. He struggles with fear and insecurity, so much so that he's not attending school anymore. With such a somber main character, and with a plot where terrified kids are being sucked away from the schools and panicking parents, it isn't really an appropriate time for silliness, so I'm glad that they reined it in. The thing is, even though I liked that it wasn't as juvenile as the others, that made it an odd fit in the trilogy. The other two were so consistent with each other and so clearly made for not really little kids, but a younger audience. And then this one, I don't know. But hey, it's not all that different. We still have kaiju and monster fights and Mothra to the rescue. It takes a long time to get more than just a fleeting glimpse of King Ghidorah's shadow, but this is one foe we're already familiar with. Still, he looks a teeny bit different. Pointier horns, shinier wings, somehow more metallic. With all the city destruction scenes, this feels more like a Godzilla movie, and at a certain point, it's impossible not to draw a parallel to 1991's Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. In their first scuffle, Mothra pulls out all kinds of new tricks to fight him. Not that it does much good. Mothra comes in strong, but inevitably gets scorched and trampled. A power boost from the Elias sisters is impossible, but Maul on her own has just enough power to help push Mothra forward. In time. Yep, to defeat King Ghidorah, Mothra must go 130 million years into the past to encounter him during his first visit. You know what that means. Time travel sequence! Woo! And how does this time travel work? Simple. Mothra just transforms and flies super fast. Mothra actually transforms several times in this movie. He doesn't even start out as plain old Mothra Leo, but as Rainbow Mothra, the form achieved at the end of the previous movie. Then to go back in time, he becomes Lightspeed Mothra, and at the beginning of the last act, he emerges as Armor Mothra, and at the very end, we see possibly the best, certainly the most beautiful form, Eternal Mothra. For the record, I had no idea what any of these forms were called. They didn't name them in the movie, but the internet knows. There's an awful lot you're left to infer. The purpose and origin of each form, the significance of King Ghidorah's tail burying itself in the ground, what the larva trio is, how Mothra manages to reappear at just the right moment. Plus, anytime you introduce time travel, it's bound to get complicated. That is perhaps the film's biggest selling point, but I'm not sure it delivers. The dinosaurs aren't awful. They could be worse, but they don't look very good either. Jurassic Park, this is not. Where I thought Rebirth of Mothra 3 did deliver, surprisingly, is on the human side of things, or I should say, the non-kaiju side. The three tiny sisters, Troublesome Belvira, Wise Maul, and Loving Laura, have, with Mothra of course, been the real focus of this trilogy, and here their storyline brings the trilogy's messages about family, forgiveness, and teamwork home. Laura's mind is taken over, and she tries to kill both her sisters, Maul outside the dome and Belvira inside. Belvira, by the way, had nothing to do with King Ghidorah's return. She didn't summon him so that she could take over the world. Maul gets help from Shota, sending him into the dome to save Laura, and she, Maul, gives up all her power to help Mothra. Laura, by the way, is now played by a different actress. It's a pity all three actresses didn't play their roles through the whole trilogy, but oh well. Once free, Laura and Belvira team up, and using the keys of courage, wisdom, and love from the opening scene, all three sisters unite and combine their powers. Only then can Mothra win for good. I really liked this. A redemptive character arc for a villain? Yes, please! In general, I think the character development of the three sisters throughout the trilogy is one of its assets. And it's Belvira who delivers some of the wisest words in the series when she assures them before leaving that it doesn't matter that we don't agree with each other. I'm not sure if this one was my favorite of the trilogy. You might be assuming that it is, but I don't know. I do feel like it was awfully serious, but then I'm contradicting myself because one of the things that I didn't love so much about the other two were that they were just so silly. So, make up your mind! What do you want? There were elements I liked from each one, but each one also had some drawbacks. I do think for the most part it's a good end to the trilogy. Each movie told its own standalone story, ending happily with everything either restored or improved, but the whole trilogy had a story as well. Going into it, I had no idea what that would be, but I was pleasantly surprised. At various points, this trilogy reminded me of All Monsters Attack, or Godzilla's Revenge, Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, and Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth. It's like it blended main elements from those movies together, but it also managed to be its own thing, and to give Mothra her own, or his own, spotlight. This was the last screen appearance for Mothra before the character's re-emergence with a brand new look in 2001's Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm happy to be talking about this stuff again. I did review a couple kaiju films in the interim, Space Amoeba, Varan the Unbelievable, but those weren't exactly at the top of my list of movies to see after I finished the Godzilla series, so it's nice to get back on track. Please go ahead and share your thoughts on the Rebirth of Mothra trilogy in the comments below if you like, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching!